The midnight sky erupted with pulsing lights as the Vesurian scout ship emerged from the clouds over Chicago. Scientists and civilians alike stood frozen in awe as the massive vessel, shaped like an elongated hexagon with glowing panels along, its hull hovered silently above the cityscape. Dr. Elena Reyes lowered her binoculars, hands trembling. After 15 years at SETI, the moment had finally arrived, proof that humanity was not alone. But the knot in her stomach suggested this wasn't the peaceful encounter she had hoped for. "Are you recording this?" she whispered to her colleague, Dr. James Chen, who nodded mutely, his eyes never leaving the spacecraft. Inside the Vesurian command vessel, Commander Zexatral studied the holographic projection of Earth with dismissive clicks of his mandibles. His iridescent exoskeleton reflected the blue glow of the ship's interior lighting as he circled the three-dimensional image. Another primitive world, he noted to his officers, compound eyes scanning the data streams. Physical specimens with minimal strength, divided political structures, and rudimentary technology. The collective will be pleased. The secondary commander, Vril Knox, manipulated the controls to zoom in on military installations. Their weapons rely on chemical propellants and basic fission. No energy shields, no gravitational manipulation, conquest assessment, minimal resistance. A different voice cut through the clinical analysis. Permission to offer an alternative perspective, Commander. The assembled officers turned to face Dr. Rael Vaughn, the expedition's xenobiologist. Smaller than the others, with more delicate features and paler skin, she approached the hologram with a data tablet in her hands. "Proceed," Zexatral permitted, mandibles twitching with mild annoyance. "Our initial scans show anomalies in their developmental pattern." Rael Vaughn projected a timeline of human technological advancement. "Note the acceleration curve. Most species take twice as long to progress from basic metallurgy to rudimentary spaceflight, and their neural structures suggest unusual adaptability." Commander Zexatral waved a dismissive limb. "Irrelevant. We've conquered species with far superior technology. The collective designates this a Class 3 acquisition target, suitable for resource extraction with minimal expected resistance." Below on Earth, chaos erupted as news of the alien vessel spread globally. Stock markets crashed, religious leaders issued conflicting interpretations. Military forces worldwide went to high alert, though no one fired, yet. In the White House Situation Room, hastily assembled officials debated response options. "We need to appear strong but non-threatening," argued the Secretary of State. "How exactly do we look strong to something that crossed interstellar space?" the Defense Secretary countered. The President rubbed her temples. "What we need is information. Do we have any communication yet?" Back on the Vesurian ship, Dr. Rael Vaughn continued her analysis in private. Something about these humans troubled her. Their entertainment broadcasts, which the Vesuri had intercepted for weeks, depicted countless scenarios of alien invasion and human victory. Unlike other conquered species, humans seemed to rehearse resistance before threats even materialized. She noted another anomaly. Humans deliberately created obstacles in their games and stories, seemingly taking pleasure in overcoming challenges. The Vesurian mind, optimized for efficiency, found this concept almost incomprehensible. "Prepare the invasion fleet," Commander Zexatral ordered through the ship-wide communication system. "We'll have this world harvested within their lunar cycle." As the scout ship withdrew to a higher orbit, Dr. Rael Vaughn filed her concerns in the mission log, knowing they would likely go unread. The collective had never failed in a conquest after all. Little did they realize they had just awakened a sleeping, giant Vesurian probe drones, disguised as metallic spheres no larger than basketballs, drifted silently through Earth's atmosphere. Their adaptive camouflage technology rendered them nearly invisible to human detection systems, appearing as nothing more than weather anomalies or equipment glitches when spotted. Inside the main Vesurian analysis chamber orbiting Earth's moon, Senior Analyst Kesmal stared at the incoming data streams with growing frustration. "These readings cannot be correct," he chittered to his subordinates. "Run the behavioral algorithms again." The holographic display before him showed bewildering human activities. Protesters marching against their own governments even as alien ships hovered overhead. Soldiers from rival nations sharing intelligence despite decades of hostility. Civilians hoarding not just necessities, but comfort items, books, games, musical instruments. Most peculiar, noted his assistant, they appear to value objects with no survival function. Dr. Rilvan entered the chamber quietly, her stance humble as protocol demanded, though her mind raced with insights her colleagues couldn't grasp. Permission to access the cultural database, she requested. Kesmal gestured impatiently. Your fixation on their entertainment continues to waste resources, xenobiologist. Their entertainment reveals psychological patterns, she countered, careful to keep her tone deferential. It may explain the anomalies in your analysis. Reluctantly, he authorized her access. The massive screen shifted to display intercepted human broadcasts, news programs, films, social media, and games. Rilvan focused the other's attention on a particular subset. Stories about alien invasions. Note the recurring themes. In nearly 70% of these narratives, humans prevail against technologically superior forces. Fiction, dismissed the senior analyst. Fantasy to comfort primitive minds. Or psychological preparation, Rilvan suggested. They rehearse crisis response through imagination, a highly unusual evolutionary adaptation. Meanwhile, in a basement laboratory at MIT, Dr. Prisha Kapoor scrutinized readings from her experimental quantum fluctuation detector. The device had been registering strange patterns since the alien ships arrived, patterns that suggested advanced cloaking technology. They're watching us, she murmured to her research partner, Dr. Marcus Washington. These readings match theoretical models for phase-shifted matter. Marcus frowned at the data. If you're right, there could be thousands of observation devices deployed globally, which means they're gathering intelligence before making their next move, Prisha concluded. We need to warn the Joint Chiefs without causing public panic. Aboard, the Vesurian command ship Commander Zexitral received the preliminary assessment report with satisfaction. The humans were reacting precisely as predicted, their governments paralyzed by indecision, their military responses uncoordinated, their populations alternating between denial and panic. Begin Phase 2 preparations, he ordered. Target their largest population centers simultaneously. Maximum psychological impact. In her private quarters, Dr. Rilvan reviewed footage that the assessment team had deemed irrelevant. Children playing elaborate strategy games, emergency workers rushing into danger to save strangers, athletes pushing physical limits for no survival advantage, artists creating works with no practical function. She composed a message marked urgent to the Command Council, caution advised. Human behavior suggests unconventional problem-solving capacity and social cohesion mechanisms our models cannot predict. The message sat unread as the invasion fleet finalized its approach vectors. The Vesurian Collective, conquerors of 18 worlds, saw no reason to reconsider their strategy against such an obviously inferior species. The trap, though they couldn't recognize it, was already closing around them. Dawn broke over Sydney Harbor as massive Vesurian warships materialized through the cloud cover. The Opera House's white shells gleamed against the shadow of the alien vessels, a stark contrast of human artistry and alien militarism. Similar, scenes unfolded simultaneously across the globe. Shanghai, New York, London, Cairo, Rio de Janeiro. The coordinated precision spoke of meticulous planning. Inside the Sydney Opera House, conductor Mei-Lin Wang canceled the morning rehearsal with a trembling voice. Go home to your families, she told her orchestra. But instead of leaving, 19-year-old cellist Jason Parker pulled out his phone. The ships have the same energy signature in every location, he said, connecting to a hastily organized global forum where civilians shared observations. There's a pattern to their deployment. Across the Pacific, Captain Sandra Ortiz watched helplessly from the bridge of the USS Ronald Reagan as F-35 fighters launched against the Los Angeles invaders. The jet's missiles disintegrated harmlessly against shimmering barriers of energy. Pull them back, she ordered. We're just wasting lives. Too late. Blinding energy beams lanced from the alien vessels, vaporizing 3 fighters instantly. The remaining pilots broke formation, executing evasive maneuvers that momentarily seemed to confuse the alien targeting systems. Commander Zexatral's voice boomed across every communication device on Earth, translated into major languages with perfect syntax but emotionless delivery. Humans of Earth, your planetary resources are now property of the Vesurian Collective. Resistance is futile and inefficient. Accept provisional citizen status and 20% of your population will be preserved as a labor force. In the White House bunker, generals and cabinet members argued over surrender terms. Similar scenes played out in Beijing, Moscow, and Delhi. But while governments deliberated, individuals acted. In Seoul, 16-year-old Minji Kim, regional esports champion, noticed patterns in the aliens' communication bursts that resembled packet data architecture. Using her gaming rig and modified firmware, she managed to intercept and decode fragments of Vesurian tactical communications. Their signals aren't as secure as they think, she messaged to the growing underground network. They never expected us to understand their compression algorithms. In Detroit, auto worker Darnell Jackson led his colleagues in repurposing the assembly line. They can stop missiles, but what about thousands of micro-drones programmed to target their sensor arrays? He suggested, as engineers quickly adapted the factory's 3D printers. At Cambridge University, quantum physics professor Helen Chen worked frantically with her graduate students, testing theories about the aliens' shield technology. Their energy barriers show fluctuations consistent with quantum field manipulation, she explained. Every shield has a resonance frequency. We just need to find it. Aboard the command ship, Tactical Officer Vril Knox reported with confusion. Unexpected resistance patterns emerging. Humans are not following standard planetary defense protocols. Clarify, demanded Commander Zextral. Their military forces are in disarray as predicted, but civilians are organizing independent resistance cells without central coordination. Our algorithms cannot predict their targeting priorities or tactics. Dr. Rielvan, monitoring from her station, felt a sensation unfamiliar to Vesurians, a cold dread. The humans weren't behaving like any species they had encountered before. They weren't surrendering. They weren't united under central command. Instead, they were adapting, communicating, improvising, millions of independent minds working on different solutions simultaneously. This was not in the assessment, Vril Knox admitted. Commander Zextral's mandibles clicked with irritation. Deploy the ground forces, crush their spirit with direct occupation. This minor deviation changes nothing. But the gleam in Dr. Rielvan's compound eyes suggested otherwise. The deviation changed everything. 8 weeks into the occupation, Commander. Zextral stared at the holographic situation map with mounting disbelief. Red indicators of resistance flashed across every continent, multiplying despite repeated suppression efforts. The Vesurian tactical algorithms, perfected across 100 conquered worlds, failed to predict human responses with any reliable accuracy. Impossible, he hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Their pattern of resistance defies all strategic logic. In Bangalore, physicist Dr. Aditya Patel led a team working around the clock in a makeshift laboratory hidden beneath a collapsed shopping mall. Before them lay a partially disassembled Vesurian energy rifle, recovered at great cost from a downed patrol unit. The power cell utilizes quantum entanglement principles, Dr. Patel explained to the assembled engineers. But the focusing mechanism relies on principles we theorized before the invasion. Dr. Krishnamurthy's papers from 2018 predicted similar technology. Can we replicate it? Asked Fatima Nazari, formerly an electrical engineering student, now resistance cell leader. Better, smiled Dr. Patel. We can improve it. Their design prioritizes energy efficiency over versatility, a cultural blind spot we can exploit. Meanwhile, in the mountains of Colorado, former Army Ranger Captain Michael Okafor trained an unlikely coalition of fighters, survivalists who once distrusted the government, environmental activists who previously protested, military installations, and suburban families who had never touched weapons before the invasion. The Vasuri expect us to fight like conventional armies, he explained, drawing battle plans in the dirt. But we'll combine Vietnamese tunnel tactics with Native American misdirection and Bedouin desert navigation. They've never faced humans before. They don't know that our history is filled with innovative ways to defeat superior forces. Across the devastated landscape of what was once Moscow, 12-year-old chess prodigy Sasha Petrov led a group of children through the rubble, carrying precious medical supplies. The Vasurian patrols ignored children, considering them non-threats, another fatal miscalculation. They think in straight lines, Sasha whispered to her companions. But chess teaches you to think 7 moves ahead and see the whole board. The grown-ups need these medicines more than we need safety. Aboard the Vasurian command ship, Dr. Riel Von compiled her 3rd report on human adaptive behaviors, knowing it would likely be ignored like the previous 2. Still, she meticulously documented the patterns emerging. Humans don't merely adapt, they transform under pressure. Their diversity, which we initially classified as a weakness, functions as an evolutionary advantage we cannot match. With no central command structure to target, resistance emerges spontaneously from their distributed intelligence network. Most concerning, they appear capable of emotional states that enhance, rather than impede, rational action during crisis. Commander, Zextral received increasingly stern messages from the Collective High Council. Their initial projection of complete subjugation within 1 lunar cycle had proved catastrophically incorrect. Already the campaign had consumed resources allocated for 3 additional planetary conquests. Deploy the biological division, he commanded, his voice vibrating with barely controlled rage. Let's see how they adapt to extinction. Second Commander Vril Knox hesitated visibly. The Council has not authorized species elimination protocols. This was designated as a resource acquisition mission, with population preservation. The parameters have changed, Zextral replied coldly. These humans represent more than a planetary threat. Their methods could inspire resistance in our previously subjugated worlds. Prepare the pathogen dispersal units. Dr. Rilvan, listening from her research station, felt an unfamiliar sensation, doubt in the collective's infallibility. The humans were teaching her something her species had forgotten across millennia of technological advancement. There was strength in adaptation, in diversity, in the beautiful chaos of individual minds working together without surrendering their uniqueness. The real war was just beginning. The Vasurian pathogen entered Earth's ecosystem through water systems, designed to be virtually undetectable until fully dispersed. Within days, the first symptoms appeared: high fever, muscle weakness, cognitive disorientation. Hospital emergency. Rooms worldwide overflowed with the afflicted. In Atlanta, Dr. Maya Rodriguez, formerly with the CDC, shivered under a thermal blanket as she examined her own blood samples under a microscope. Despite her advancing symptoms, her hands remained steady. The pathogen targets our neural pathways, she dictated into a recorder, her voice hoarse. But it's not naturally evolved, it's engineered for our specific biology. They studied us before attacking. Across the lab, Dr. William Chen adjusted the parameters on equipment salvaged from the abandoned CDC headquarters. Which means they created a blueprint of human cellular structure, he continued her thought. A blueprint we might exploit. In Kenya's Rift Valley, Elder Nala Kiprono led a team gathering traditional medicinal plants. My grandmother survived the colonial diseases with these roots, she explained to the university researchers accompanying her. The wisdom of our ancestors combined with your science may be our path forward. At the makeshift research hub in Auckland, New Zealand, one of the few major cities partially spared from direct attack, scientists from 6 continents shared discoveries through improvised communication networks. Dr. Fatima Al-Zarani, connecting from a bunker beneath Cairo, reported a breakthrough. The pathogen has a synthetic component that resembles compounds in our experimental cancer treatments, she explained, her image flickering on the screen. And we've found similar structures in the biological material recovered from damaged Vasurian equipment. Dr. James Okonkwo, a formerly homeless veteran with a biochemistry degree who now led the Auckland Research Center, recognized the pattern immediately. They built this weapon using their own biological material as a framework, he concluded, which means their biology and ours share fundamental similarities, finished Dr. Rodriguez from Atlanta, her face gaunt, but eyes bright with realization. They made themselves vulnerable when they tried to exploit our weaknesses. 3 weeks after the pathogen's release, something unprecedented occurred. Human medical researchers, combining traditional herbal knowledge with cutting-edge virology and bioengineered components salvaged from Vesurian technology, developed an effective treatment. More astonishingly, those recovered from the illness displayed enhanced neural connectivity, their brains forming new pathways around damaged areas, resulting in accelerated problem-solving abilities. The true shock came when Dr. Okonkwo's team engineered a modified version of the pathogen that targeted the Vesurian respiratory system. The aliens, genetically homogeneous to maintain their hive mind compatibility, had no defense against this unexpected countermeasure. Aboard the command ship, the Vesurian bioweapons chief collapsed. His breathing labored as the human-modified pathogen spread through the vessel's air circulation system. Impossible, he gasped as medical technicians rushed to his side. They've turned our creation against us. Commander Zextrel, isolated in his personal quarters with independent life, support watched through surveillance feeds as his crew succumbed one by one. His mandibles clicked in agitation as he opened a direct channel to the Collective High Council. Request immediate evacuation and reinforcements, he transmitted. The humans have weaponized our pathogen. Repeat, they have weaponized our own biological agent against us. In her sealed laboratory, Dr. Rielvan reviewed the data with growing amazement. The humans hadn't just survived the pathogen, they had adapted to it, improved because of it, and repurposed it. No species in the collective's long history of conquest had ever demonstrated such resilience. We have gravely underestimated them, she whispered to herself, making a decision that would forever change her destiny and the fate of 2 species. And we will pay the price for our arrogance. Lightning split the sky over what remained of London as rain hammered the ruins of Parliament. Under this natural cover, 500 resistance fighters moved into position, their faces streaked with mud to defeat Vesurian thermal imaging. Colonel Emily Winters, formerly of British Special Forces, studied the looming alien stronghold through night vision binoculars. The massive structure had once been Buckingham Palace, now transformed into the regional command center for Europe's occupation forces. Remember, she whispered into her communication device, we're not here to win. We're here to be seen losing. Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded simultaneously. Outside New Delhi, farmers armed with modified agricultural equipment approached a Vesurian outpost from the east. In Buenos Aires, a fleet of civilian boats moved toward alien water processing facilities. Near Cairo, desert fighters emerged from hidden tunnels beneath the occupation zone. None of these groups expected victory. They were the decoys. The true operation unfolded silently as specialized teams infiltrated key Vesurian installations. Their mission? Plant the newly developed neural disruptors designed to interfere with the aliens' hive-mind communication. In London, Colonel Winters gave the signal. Operation Trojan begins now. Her forces charged the alien stronghold with a ferocity that surprised even the well-prepared Vesurians. Human fighters willingly exposed themselves to draw fire, creating openings for others. Some carried homemade shields that, while unable to stop Vesurian energy weapons completely, dispersed enough energy to allow the bearer several precious seconds of action before falling. Commander Zextrel, monitoring the attacks from his orbiting command ship, could not comprehend what he was seeing. They're sacrificing themselves in tactically illogical patterns, he noted, mandibles clicking rapidly. Why would they decrease their survival probability for others not in their genetic line? Tactical Officer Vrilnox analyzed the incoming data streams. It appears to be a coordinated global attack, but our models indicate insufficient force for any strategic victory. A distraction, Zextrel realized suddenly. But from what? By then, it was too late. throughout the Viserion network. The neural disruptors activated simultaneously. The effect wasn't immediately catastrophic. The devices lacked sufficient power, but they created momentary blind spots in the hive mind's awareness. Through these gaps, something unprecedented occurred. Dr. Ryle Vaughn, having made her decision, transmitted critical intelligence directly to the human resistance, shield frequencies, communication protocols, and most importantly, the location of the quantum entanglement nodes that synchronized the Viserion collective consciousness. Her transmission concluded with words that would later be inscribed on monuments worldwide. Your perceived weaknesses are actually your greatest strengths. The collective cannot understand sacrifice, creativity, or individual choice, concepts that form the core of your civilization. This blindness will be their downfall. In the London operation, despite heavy casualties, Colonel Winters's team succeeded in capturing a Viserion officer. The alien, cut off temporarily from the collective by the neural disruptors, experienced something unprecedented: isolation within its own consciousness. "Why do you resist?" it asked its captors as they retreated through underground tunnels. "Your probability of species survival would increase with submission." Professor Omar Hassan, a philosopher who had joined the resistance after losing his family in the initial attack, answered simply, "Because we don't calculate our worth in survival odds. We measure it in freedom, a concept your hive mind cannot grasp." Aboard the command ship, Commander Zexatral received reports of Dr. Ryle Vaughn's betrayal with cold fury. "Find her," he ordered, "and prepare our remaining forces for maximum response. No more strategic restraint." But as alarms blared across his vessel, he faced an uncomfortable truth. For the first time in the collective's long history of conquest, they were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. Rain lashed against the shattered windows of the Natural History Museum in London as the elite strike team prepared for humanity's most daring operation yet. Assembled from former Special Forces operatives across a dozen nations, these 50 individuals represented Earth's best hope. Captain Sophia Chen checked her equipment one final time, a hybrid weapon combining salvaged Viserion technology with human engineering. Her gaze swept over her improbable team: a Russian sniper, an Australian demolitions expert, a Brazilian hacker, a Kenyan tactical specialist. "Remember," she said quietly, "we get one shot at this. The flagship will be vulnerable for exactly 7 minutes during the shield recalibration cycle." The intelligence had come from Dr. Ryle Vaughn, who now worked directly with the human resistance from a hidden location. Her defection had provided critical insights into Viserion operations, though the aliens had already altered many protocols in response. Across the globe, diversionary attacks launched simultaneously, stretching the aliens' response capabilities thin. In orbit, human scientists activated a makeshift electromagnetic pulse weapon, not powerful enough to disable the Viserion flagship, but sufficient to create the brief window the strike team needed. When the signal came, Captain Chen's team deployed with precision. Stealth transport vessels, cobbled together from modified civilian aircraft and Viserion components, approached the massive flagship hovering over the ruins of London. "Shield fluctuation detected," reported technical specialist Jackson over the secure channel. "Window opening in 3, 2, 1. The teams infiltrated through maintenance hatches, moving through the alien vessel with practiced efficiency. They encountered resistance, but the Viserion defenders appeared disorganized, a benefit of the neural disruptors now deployed throughout Earth's atmosphere. In the heart of the vessel, Captain Chen and her core team finally reached their objective: the quantum communication hub, a crystalline chamber where glowing filaments connected in three-dimensional patterns that pulsed with unearthly light. "This is it," whispered Dr. Samira Afolayan, the Nigerian physicist who had theorized the hub's existence before ever seeing it. "The physical nexus of their hive mind. Those crystal matrices maintain quantum entanglement across their entire species." They worked quickly, placing devices developed by a worldwide collaboration of scientists. Not bombs, something far more sophisticated. Each device emitted a precisely calibrated field designed to alter the quantum state of the entanglement nodes. As the team completed their task and began withdrawal, alarm systems blared throughout the ship. Commander Zexatral's voice echoed through the corridors, his usual calm replaced by unmistakable panic. Intruder alert in the sacred chamber. All personnel converge. Protect the communion nodes. Too late. When activated, the effect of the devices on the Visurians proved more profound than even the human scientists had predicted. Cut off from the collective, individual Visuri experienced independent thought for the first time in their evolutionary history. Throughout the flagship, then spreading to vessels worldwide, Visurian soldiers collapsed, overwhelmed by the sudden isolation of individual consciousness. Some fell into catatonic states, others experienced existential panic. Many, discovering individuality, simply stopped fighting. Commander Zexatral, his mind fractured but somehow adapting, watched in horror as his perfectly orchestrated invasion disintegrated. For the first time, he experienced an emotion new to his species: regret. In his private chamber, surrounded by the silent bodies of his personal guard, he activated a direct transmission to the High Council, his voice trembling with newfound individuality. We never understood what we faced. Their disunity was never weakness, it was the source of a strength we cannot comprehend. Each human contains multitudes, each thinks thoughts unknown to others. We, in our perfect unity, became stagnant. They, in their beautiful chaos, became unstoppable. As Captain Chen's team fought their way back to their extraction point, she glimpsed through a viewport the unprecedented sight of Visurian ships turning away from Earth, their formations breaking apart like scattered leaves in a windstorm. The breaking point had arrived. 1 year after the massive ships had darkened Earth's skies, the spring sunrise over the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in Geneva carried a different weight. Representatives from every nation gathered beneath a dome, constructed from repurposed Visurian alloys, a fitting symbol for humanity's triumph through adaptation. Dr. Elena Reyes, whose observations during first contact had provided crucial early insights, adjusted her translation earpiece as she took her seat in the front row. Beside her sat Dr. James Chen, now director of the newly formed Xenotechnology Integration Division. "Never thought we'd see this day," he whispered. Elena smiled. "I always believed we would." On the stage, Secretary General Amara Okafor raised her hands for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. "Today marks not only humanity's survival but our emergence onto a wider galactic stage," she began. "The remaining Visurian fleet has withdrawn beyond Neptune's orbit. Their collective has formally acknowledged humanity's right to self-determination and requested diplomatic relations." Murmurs swept through the assembly. Victory was one thing. Peaceful coexistence with their former invaders seemed unimaginable to many. "I now welcome our guests who have taken a courageous step toward a different future." The side doors opened. Dr. Rilvan entered first, her smaller form now familiar to many human leaders after months of collaboration. Behind her walked a figure that caused the room to tense. Commander Zexatral, once the architect of Earth's intended subjugation. He moved differently now, his formerly rigid posture now carrying a subtle uncertainty. The neural connection to the collective, partially restored but fundamentally altered, had transformed him along with many Visurians, who had chosen individuality over absolute unity. "I come before you," he began, his translated voice carrying through the chamber. "Not as conqueror but as student. My species has dominated through technological superiority for 10,000 years, yet you defeated us using qualities we had dismissed as evolutionary weaknesses." He gestured toward screens displaying data from across the galaxy. "Already your victory sparks change throughout the stars. 3 subjugated worlds have declared independence. The collective for the first time faces genuine diplomatic negotiation rather than unconditional surrender." Dr. Rilvan stepped forward. "We bring knowledge of 18 spacefaring civilizations, faster than light travel, and technologies your scientists have only begun to explore. In exchange, we seek to understand what we now recognize as your greatest achievement. A society that values both individual excellence and collective purpose without sacrificing either. In the months that followed, Earth transformed. Vasurian. Technology, modified and improved by human ingenuity, accelerated recovery from the devastation of war. The quantum communication principles that had once sustained the hive mind now formed the basis for instantaneous global networks, connecting humanity like never before, yet preserving the individual thought the Vasurians had lacked. On a hilltop, observatory in New Zealand, Captain Sophia Chen stood beside her unlikely friend, a Vasurian engineer named Velmar, who had been among the first to embrace individual consciousness. "Your people will venture to the stars soon," Velmar observed, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors his compound eyes perceived differently than human vision. Sophia nodded. "But we'll go as explorers, not conquerors. The galaxy will not be the same," the Vasurian replied. "You've taught us that true strength lies not in perfect unity, but in the beautiful chaos of diverse minds working together." Below them, lights began appearing across the landscape as evening settled. Thousands of individual illuminations, forming a constellation as magnificent as the stars emerging above. Earth had survived because the invaders had fundamentally misunderstood what made humanity powerful. The price of their arrogance had been defeat. The reward for their humility would be evolution. The stars would indeed remember the lesson. Never underestimate a species that turns diversity into its greatest weapon.